Okay, welcome everyone. So I'm very glad to see you all here today and to continue exploring the Dhamma. And I hope you all had a very good week last week. And we have been looking at some cittas according to planes last week, and we haven't finished with this topic yet. So today we are going to continue with this, and hopefully we are going to get into more details of Kamavachara cittas, which are the cittas with characteristics of the centrium. So today we're going to do that. So before we start, let's pay respect to the Buddha, as we usually do before we start. We recite 3 times. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Homage to the sublime, the victorious, and the totally self-enlightened one. Okay, so last week we have a few questions during the session, and when I was editing the video, I realized that at some point I missed or misunderstood some of the questions. So I would like to address that before we start with the topic of today. Some are extra informations and some are clarifications. Okay, so first of all, let's go to the word vana. Last week, Edith asked about the word vana. It comes from nibbana, need plus vana. So this vana, she said, if there would be another meaning other than craving. So here is a search in the Pali English dictionary. So vana means craving, and also it says netting of a bed, which I don't really know how, if it is like a mosquito net or something like a net. But I think more important meaning here also we can see is vana is also means like sewing, like stitching things together. So I talked about this with my teacher, with Sayadaw Kamsachara. And so he said that vana is a rare form of saying craving, but it also means craving. And the meaning sewing here is important because craving, as we all know, is the ingredient, mental ingredient, or the thing that stitch or sew each life together from this life to another life, like the link between one birth and another birth throughout samsara. So in this way, this meaning here, also with the sewing meaning, it means a craving here. So need, as we said last time, is the departure from. So departure from this linking of this stitching of this craving is nibbana. So here, this vana, in this case, it also means craving here. Last time I did also mention tanha. So tanha is a very common way of meaning craving. So also we have other words such as raga, avijja, kamachanda, and all these words we will see in the Pali words in the suttas or in the Abhidhamma. All of them actually just refer to one cetasika, lobha, in ultimate reality. The mental ingredient of greed. Sometimes we use the word greed, craving, desire, or self. So there are many, many English words that we can use. So to avoid misunderstanding, then we just know lobha is the ultimate reality that all these words wants to refer to here, including vana also. So that's one of the more information about Edith's questions last week. Then we come to Delawa's question. So last time he said that whether there are specific cetasika for specific bases. So this is actually quite an unusual way of relating the citta and the basis, because basis, what we mean basis, later on we will get into details in chapter 3. We are not there yet, so maybe it is not clear yet. So basis, what we mean here, eye base, ear base, nose base, tongue base, body base, or heart base, all these bases are actually, they are rupa. They are kind of material property. So these 6 bases serve as a support, as a physical support for citta, together with its associated cetasikas to arise. From the eye base, only eye consciousness together with its cittasika arise through the eye base. Then for ear base, only ear consciousness together with its associated cittasika arise through the eye base. In the same way for nose, tongue, and body. And other than these 5 sense consciousness, all other types of cittas arise based on the heart base, with the support of the heart base, let's say. Going back to Delawa's questions about cittasika. So these 5, last week I also talked about this, but just to clarify, they are very simple cittas actually. So they only associated with the 7 basic cittasikas. Because if we haven't seen all the information yet, we are jumping a little bit away from our content at the moment. So it sounds a little bit like complicated, but actually step by step, we are going towards that direction. And when we are there, everything will be very clear. Now, just as a general explanation. So these 5 sense consciousness, they only associate with these 7 types of cittasika, which are the same for all of them. In this case, we can only say that there is citta specified for that base, eye consciousness, ear consciousness. But for cittasika, there are no specific cittasika for eye consciousness, for ear consciousness, and for tongue consciousness like that. So I hope it's more clear in this way. And then for all other cittas that based on heart base, they can associate with not only that 7 cittasikas, but also some that are sometimes there, sometimes not. And also together sometimes with akusala cittasikas, the unwholesome ones, and sometimes with the wholesome ones. So obviously wholesome ones and unwholesome ones, they don't associate with each other. So they do not arise in the same citta. But what I mean is all other kinds associate with more ingredients. So the 5 senses, they are very simple one, only associate with the 7 basic cittasikas and nothing more. And other ones are more complex. Then later we will get into details in the coming chapters. So that's about whether there are specific cittasikas or citta for the basis. Is that clear? Okay. Now, since we are talking, in the graphic, we just saw heart base now. So we also talked about heart base last week. So extra information in the Patana, the Paccaya Nidesa, the 24 modes of conditionality, there you will find in number 8, Nisaya Paccayo, the dependence or support conditions. Then there are other, this is only for your reference. We are now even jumping further. We are now this already in chapter 8. Okay, so just a reference for you to see where the Buddha said, what did the Buddha said. There's also a clarification. Last time I said that the Buddha said Watu. I made a mistake. Actually, the Buddha said yam rupam. Now you will see. So in this Nisaya Paccayo, there is one verse for each of the base. So eye base, ear base, and then the last one, the body base here. Kaya yatanam kaya vinyana daduya tam sabiyutakanancha dhammanam Nisaya Paccayena Paccayo. Body base is related to the body consciousness element and its associated states by dependence condition, because we're talking about conditionality there. Then when it comes to the other manodadu and manovinyanadadu, which are other mind, other cittas, then it says yam rupam nisaya manodadu cha manovinyanadadu cha vatanti. Depending on this matter, the mind element and mind consciousness element arise. So here, this yam rupam is the word that the Buddha used for the material that all other cittas, that supports all other cittas to arise for 5 aggregate beings, no? For beings who have mind and matter. So here, this yam rupam is the word that the Buddha used. And then, so this actually, the ancient teachers explained that this matter that is mentioned by the Buddha, although he did not specify which material property exactly it is, but this matter is located somewhere in the bloodstream near the heart. It's called the heart base. So therefore, in the Abhidhamma, with Abhidhamma Tasangaha, we find this word Hadaya Watu, which is heart base. No, now our teacher also, they say that although we say heart base, here the heart base does not mean the whole heart organ, not the whole heart here. It's just somewhere in the bloodstream, inside the heart area. Why do we say so? Because when new life, in this case, according to the Buddha's teaching, when rebirth consciousness arises, some material property arise together with this citta, with this rebirth consciousness. No, so at that moment, this heart base, this hadaya watu, this material property already arise at that moment. Even in the embryo, even the heart organ has not been developed yet. But that hadaya watu material property is already there. So it is very hard to say, like in the tiny little being that is just developing the cells, no? So in that case, we cannot say that it is a heart, but that material property is already there. And then later on it develops, no? So this is a little bit more information about heart base. Okay. Now, let's continue with more clarification of last week. Last week, we also talked about rupa, the definition of rupa as something that changes when it comes into contact with adverse conditions, with different conditions. Now, the change we mean here, we have to see it in a little bit longer time frame. Rupa is like mind also, it arises and it passes away. Then in the same position, or the same, more or less the same location, a different material property arise and passes away. A similar type of rupa arise in that place, and then it is like the next generation of that rupa. What means by change here is that when this rupa, it arises, then the lifespan of rupa is very short. No, it arises, exists, and then it passes away. So that one, it does not change itself, but the next generation of rupa that arise there, it changes because of the conditions. For example, there's an insect bite in that area. So at that moment, that rupa that arises at that time, it passed away already. But the next generation of the rupa that arises there, then it changed a little bit and then it passed away. Then the next one, it changed again, it changed a little bit and then it passed away. And then it changed a little bit, then it passed away. So we see the little bumpy red thing after the insect bite, no? So that's the change that is meant by the change, not exactly that rupa, but the next generations of rupa changes. Now about hunger and thirst, also last time was a question there. Last time I mentioned about like when we are hungry, then maybe the next rupas that comes, it changes a little and then it sounds guru, 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 or like something changes in the stomach. But also if we see even longer term, if a person does not eat or drink for a period of time, then those rupa, the next generations of rupas that arise and passes, it changes. It becomes thinner, or it becomes something changes in the body. So those things that changes according to this adverse conditions are what is defined as rupa. Okay, is that clear? Yeah, Julie had a question last week about the senses. When I listened again, then I heard you said that whether they're unwholesome and wholesome senses. Then I just want to clarify here that in this graphic, we are talking about different types of consciousness. So in the sensual plane, there are unwholesome cittas, unwholesome consciousness, and wholesome consciousness, as well as other types, which is the resulting consciousness and the functional consciousness, which I didn't put it into the graphic here. But senses itself are neither wholesome nor unwholesome. So there are no wholesome senses or unwholesome senses. But even for the five sense consciousness, they are also neither wholesome nor unwholesome. Only our reaction towards the information received through these senses can be wholesome or unwholesome. So that I want to clarify. Well, there was one last question last week also about whether we can see things with the mind. So I also talked about this with my teacher, and he also said that the mind is actually very powerful. So whatever that is not an visible object seen by the eye can be seen by the mind, are only seen by the mind. For example, last week we talked about seeing some visions or some things that in the meditation or other things, as the mind is very powerful, it is possible that it sees something, but those things are absolutely not through the eye door. All those things are through the mind door. So only that point. Okay, so up till here, that was all the clarification and extra information for last week. And today we are going to continue with cittas according to planes. So let's get ready to get into today's material. We have a lot to cover today. Last week, we talked about imagining the mind as a spectrum. There are grosser cittas and there are subtler or finer cittas. Here, now we first want to talk about the Kamavachara cittas, the sensual plane today. Now, Kamavachara citta here, translated as the cittas with characteristics of the sensual planes. Kama, this Pali word itself, it means sensual pleasure, and avachara means moving in or frequenting or plane. So what we mean here are those cittas that have the characteristics, or they are moving in or they frequent in the sensual realm of sensual, on the realm of sensual pleasure. So they associate with their respective kind of objects. And the main feature of this group of cittas, of Kamavachara cittas, is that they are mostly related to the five senses in the form of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. So these are the cittas that are mostly associated with the senses. They have to do with the senses. But here we are not talking about whether they are wholesome or unwholesome yet. We are just defining that this group are those, the Kamavachara cittas are those that are related mostly to the senses. Okay, so this is the group here. Now let's go to the Rupavachara cittas. The Rupavachara cittas have to do with jhanas. Let's see. The Rupavachara cittas are those cittas that are related to jhana that takes concept based on matter as object of meditation. So we'll go into a little bit more details. So the first group that has the characteristics of the sensual plane has to do with mostly the five senses, and then now this group has to do with meditation. Let's see. So Rupavachara citta are those cittas with characteristics of the fine material plane. Now here Rupa means matter or means form, and Avachara again means moving in, frequenting, or plane. So this type of citta here are those that are related to samatha meditation. Now here, although it says rupa, matter or form here, but you see that it's translated as fine material. Sensual realm cittas, they are also obviously relating to matter, no? But here this rupa is different. We are talking about fine material here. Okay, so one of the group in this category are those jhana cittas itself. Those are the consciousness or citta that arise in deep meditative states. So when a person is meditating and then he or she concentrated her mind into a very, very, very high degree of concentration, that then these jhana cittas arise. Now, comparing with the characteristic of the sensual plane, this group is needs some more work for this type of cittas to arise. So these states are reached through calming, stabilizing, and strengthening of mental activity. So only by doing this with a conscious effort will this type of citta arise. This group, Rupavachara citta, is different from the previous group, the Kamavachara citta, in the sense that most of the time, satisfying the sense is very like an automatic reaction, no? Like we don't have to think too much about it. and it doesn't require a lot of effort, let's say to open the fridge and see what am I going to snack now. And so those kind of cittas does not require a lot of effort. But for the other kind, rupa vachara citta, for those cittas to arise, a conscious or determined effort directed towards calming, stabilizing, and strengthening of the mental activity is necessary. And how is that being done? Through a systematical way. So there is a specific systematical way of how to achieve this jhana. So the Buddha, he always taught very systematically. He explained in detail, step by step, what needs to be done and how to do it and why. So now this rupa vachara citta, cittas with characteristics of the fine material plane, let's see again, is Sayadaw U Titila, he says, there is a determined effort directed towards the calming, stabilizing, and strengthening of mental activity by the systematic inhibition of factors hindering such achievement. Okay, let's read a little bit more here. By the systematic inhibition of factors hindering such achievement. So first we have to know what are the factors that prevent the mind to be calm, to be stable, and to be strong, right? So by systematically suppressing these factors, then the mind becomes concentrated and those jhana cittas arise. So those factors that prevent the mind to become stable and strong are called the 5 hindrances, the nivaranas. So what are the nivaranas? What are the 5 hindrances? What does not let the mind calm down? Sense desire, kamachanda, ill will, vyavada, sloth and torpor, tinamida, restlessness and worry, udacha and kukucha, and doubt, vichikicha. So let's look at them a little bit one by one. Sense desire. So I think from time to time we experience this, no? Oh, I want this, I want that. Let's just remember a little bit. When we are craving for an ice cream or for something, is the mind calm? Is the mind stable? And most of the time it is not. So this sense desire is one of the hindrances that does not let the mind calm, stable, and be strong. No? So this is one of the hindrance. Then it will, of course, when there is like anger, aversion, it will like having hatred towards the other. Very obviously, the mind cannot be calm, cannot be stable. In the same way, when it is like the mind is very sleepy, we don't know what's happening, and then that time also mind is not strong, it's not stable. And when there's restlessness and worry, in the same way, we feel like this, no, we cannot calm down. So very obviously, this is also a hindrance towards the samatha meditation, tranquility meditation, and of course with doubt as well. So these are the 5 hindrances or 5 factors that prevent the mind from calming and stabilizing. So through the samatha meditation, this kind of jhana citta can be achieved. So when the mind becomes stronger and stronger, then these 5 hindrances are being suppressed and concentration become very, very strong, that this jhana citta will arise. And more about these jhana cittas later, when we get into that category, we will look at them one by one. Now, just a little bit about the object of meditation here. For this type of jhana, they take concept based on material quality, which is rupa, such as earth, fire, water, air, color, or space. They take this kind of object as their meditation object. So therefore, they are also called the fine material plane, with characteristics of the fine material plane, because they take rupa concept based on material quality as their meditation object. Okay, so in the same way, very similar cittas are those that are called the arupa vachara cittas. So this is another group that we're going into. Now, these arupa vachara cittas are those cittas related to jhana that takes non-material qualities as object of meditation. We have seen that the Rupavachara Cittas, the one of the previous group, they are with characteristics of the fine material plane. And this one, here, this Pali word, here means negation. So Rupa means non-material. And Avachara, again, means moving in, frequenting, or plane. No? So those cittas with the characteristics of the moving in or frequenting in the non-material plane are those that are called the Arupavachara citta. Let's take a little bit of look of their feature. So these types of consciousness or cittas are even more refined and therefore a higher degree of development than that of the previous group, the Rupavachara citta, in as much as its practice considers even the most tenuous aspect of material quality as being far too coarse. So remember the last group in the samatha meditation, they take the concept based on material quality as their meditation object. No? So here for this type of meditation, usually Arupavachara citta, they can only be achieved after the Rupavachara cittas. So this samatha meditation is really step by step. So after that, their mind become even finer and more subtle. And then they think that object that they are taking are still too gross for them. So in that case, then change their object from concept based on material property into non-material property. So it is like a higher level of concentration with more subtle objects. So it's from Rupavachara citta, then it's going to more refined and more subtle object and level of concentration. So this jhana citta, in the same way, is achieved through samatha meditation. Object of meditation here is non-material qualities, is arupa, such as infinite space or infinite consciousness, etc. So here we can understand in a way that citta, consciousness, and its object, the object that it takes, they must match each other because they are intimately related. Citta, last week we also said that citta, it must always take an object, no? Because this is the work or the function of citta itself. So citta takes an object. So this citta and the object, they always match each other. So a gross mind, they always take a grosser object. Then when the mind is calmer and more subtle, then more subtle mind obviously take more subtle objects. So these Arupavachara cittas, those consciousness with the characteristics of the non-material plane, they take more subtle objects and hence higher level of concentration and jhana in this sense. Okay, so we have up till now covered Kamavachara cittas, the cittas with characteristic of the sensual realm or sensual plane, then those with the characteristic of fine material plane and the non-material plane. Then we come to the last group, the Lokuttara cittas. Lokuttara cittas are those even finer minds. They are the cittas that takes nibbana as object. Now let's look at them. Lokuttara cittas, translated as the supramundane consciousness. Loka, this Pali word means the world. Uttara means that which is beyond. So those cittas that are beyond the world. These cittas arise when one have cultivated sufficient wisdom to permanently remove certain defilements, which binds one to mundane thoughts and practiced. In other words, attained enlightenment. So this kind of cittas are those cittas that arise when a person attained enlightenment. Now here we have to pay attention to see that it is permanently removed, because when the jhana cittas arise, those defilements such as the 5 hindrances that we just saw right now, the sense, desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness, remorse, and doubt, etc., those are being suppressed only with the jhana cittas, but they are not permanently removed. suppressed meaning that during jhana or a period after the jhana, the person is very calm, but that does not mean that those 5 hindrances or those defilements will never arise again in the mind of that person, that it can never arise again. But for these Lokuttara Cittas, they are so powerful that they can permanently remove or eradicate this kind of defilements. It actually eradicates not the defilement itself, but the possibility of it to arise again. It removes that. It's called anuseya. Later we will come to that. So it removes the latent tendency of the defilement. So with this type of cittas arising, then a certain kind of defilements, depending on the level of enlightenment, are being permanently removed, and that cannot be arise in the mental process of that being anymore. So in other words, that person attained enlightenment. So this kind of Lokuttara Cittas can arise only through the meditation of vipassana. Vipassana literally means means in different ways, and pasana means to see. So to see reality in different angles with wisdom and through different ways, and meaning seeing reality as it really is. And the object here of this kind of cittas are nibbana. Lokuttara Cittas always take nibbana as its object. Yes, Claudia.
So Rupa Vachara, we take the object as a water, fire, which we know the object, or at least we imagine it. But in the case of Arupa, we don't know the object. Is that correct? Because I don't know the object of infinite space, even the Nibbana one. So my question is, these cittas arise by themselves, or you make an effort just in the case as the Rupa Vachara one? So I don't know if my question is clear.
Okay, so for Rupa Vachara Citta, if a person wants to attain some Rupa Vachara jhana, in that case, then a person takes samatha meditation. Now with samatha meditation here, they take the concept of, let's say, earth element or fire element. There are, in the 9th chapter, we are going into the meditation practice, and there is 40 types of meditation objects being mentioned in that chapter about this meditation. So what kind of object can be taken with this for this practice? For example, here, let's say earth element. So this earth element here also is not really the earth itself, but it is the earth element, a concept based on the earth element. So let's say a person practice, he made an earth disc, and then he look at it, and then he concentrate and on that earth disc that he made. Then later on, he closed his eyes, and then he see the earth disc in his mind because he look at it so much, no? Then later on, he don't need that earth disc, physical earth disc anymore. So he only take the image of that earth disc in his mind, and then he keeps contemplating on that, and then that object is not a visible object anymore. It is the concept based on that earth element, no? Then it gets refined, and then the minds get more and more concentrated. Then at some point, that jhana citta arise in his mind. So that's for Rupa Vachara Citta, no? Then for Arupa Vachara Citta, if a person wants to attain that Arupa Vachara jhana, he must first complete those Rupa Vachara jhana. So it's step by step, no? First jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. And then for the 5th jhana, in Abhidhamma way, because in Sutta way, sometimes it's mentioned only 4 jhanas. Later we will get into details of what's the difference. Now, for that, then he takes what he takes, like he takes infinite space. So he takes like, he expand, because it is a concept. So the mind knows this object. He expand space like big, further and bigger and bigger and bigger. He imagined like the space is to an infinite, in an infinite way. So like that, then he that is his meditation object. And then when his mind is so concentrated, at some point, jhana citta arise. So you mentioned that whether one has to make an effort, surely one has to make an effort in the concentration. Because when we practice and samatha meditation, then the person, he concentrates, he practice, then those minds arise by itself. So the person he only do the causes, no? He only put effort and he practice, then the result arise by itself, no? Then so those kind of citta arise when the mind is, when all the conditions are fulfilled. Later on in another section, when we talk about these cittas one by one of these jhana cittas, then what elements or what mental ingredients are inside there, we will see that there must be concentration, there must be other things like the mental ingredient that are important for these jhana cittas, then it will become very clear. Okay, now for Nibbana.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. For Nibbana, also one have to practice vipassana meditation. So through the Noble Eightfold Path, now you might have heard about it. Later, we will also get into details. Then one practice, and when all the conditions are fulfilled, wisdom is enough, then those Lokuttara Cittas, specifically the path consciousness, Magga Citta, arise. And that's the moment when the person gets enlightened. Okay. Okay, so now we have covered briefly the classification of cittas according to plane, the Kamavachara, Rupavachara, Arupavachara, and the Lokuttara cittas, no? Okay, so all the 89 types or 121 types of cittas are classified inside these groups. In the Abhidhamma Sangha, we are going to look at the cittas one by one, and then all of them fits into these 4 categories. So now we see the potential of a human existence, no? From very gross, gross mind that are, let's say, attached to the sensual pleasure, to the attainment of Nibbana, like those very refined, well-trained mind, all are possible for a human being. Now the question is, in which part of our potential do we dwell more? Now, personally, since I have not attained any jhana, nor enlightenment, so here only, no, all the time. But still, it is good to know that it is possible that more refined cittas can arise through systematical training. So slowly and steadily, at least we know that it is possible, and then we move towards more subtle and noble minds. No? So let's take a 5 minutes break, and then we will come back for the next. Continue with the next section. Okay, see you in a little while. Welcome back, everyone. I just saw that in the chat box, Bob says that about seeing. He says it's worth noting too that our eye doesn't actually see composite objects. Modern neurologists say that our mind constructs images and perceptions of things around us as the eye moves around many times each second. Exactly, the Buddha explained the same thing. So later on, when we get into the mind door process, then we will see how the mind, how eye consciousness take different objects and compose it into different concepts. So we will see that later on. Very interesting process. Thank you, Bob, for sharing. Now that we have finished introducing the different categories of cittas according to plane, we will now go into the Kamavachara first. Okay. Now, Kamavachara cittas, those cittas which with characteristics of the sensual plane, are further divided into 3 groups. The first one is called akusala cittas, the unwholesome consciousness, unwholesome cittas. And the second group is called the ahetuka citta, rootless consciousness. We are coming to that. And then we have also sobana citta. Sobana, this word in Pali means beautiful. So we have beautiful consciousness. So under kamavachara citta, we have unwholesome consciousness, rootless consciousness, and beautiful consciousness. They are divided into these three categories. Now here, unwholesome consciousness, we can understand unwholesome consciousness. Beautiful consciousness, we can also have a guess of what it is. Then how about rootless consciousness? Rootless sounds a little bit like, what does that mean? So first we have to come to define of what do we mean by roots. So in the Buddha's teaching, altogether, there are 6 roots. 3 of them are beautiful and 3 of them are unwholesome. Let's look at these unwholesome ones first. There are actually 6 cetasikas. Okay, now the first one is lobha, greed and attachment. The second is dosa, aversion. And the third one is moha, delusion or ignorance. Then on the other hand, for the beautiful ones, they are the opposite. Lobha, here are again, Pali word mean negation. So non-attachment or generosity. Or dosa, non-aversion or loving kindness. Moha, so non-delusion or wisdom. So these 6 are called roots. Now here, just like plants, if the roots are strong, the plant becomes stronger. They can grow very strong. So those cittas that have roots, have any of these 6 kinds of roots, they are stronger consciousness, stronger cittas. So those that are without roots are less strong, okay? So now we go back to this graphic, the previous graphic. So the akusala cittas, what do we mean by those akusala cittas? Akusala cittas are actually those consciousness or cittas that are associated with the 3 unwholesome roots. And those beautiful consciousness are those that are associated with these 3 beautiful roots. And the other category, the ahetuka citta, the rootless consciousness, means those cittas that do not associate with the unwholesome nor the beautiful roots, without any of these mental factors there. Okay, so first we will look into the unwholesome group, but before that, it would be good to define what does the Buddha mean by wholesome and unwholesome here first. Okay, so how to define akusala? What is akusala? And what is kusala? What is wholesome? In the Buddha's teaching, for any person, any being, all our actions can be divided into 3 types: bodily action, verbal action, and mental action. So imagine if we put all of our actions into a graph. On the one end, we have wisdom, and on the other end, we have ignorance and craving. All those actions that strive to be away from ignorance and craving, at the same time, that leads towards more wisdom, are those that are called wholesome actions. Kusala actions, no? Kusala. So kusala, wholesome bodily action, wholesome verbal actions, and wholesome mental actions, no? Then on the other hand, all those that lead us to more and more ignorance and craving are those that are called unwholesome, akusala. So this is the definition of kusala and akusala. In simple form, the teaching of the Buddha are directed specifically to the overcoming and destruction of ignorance and craving, avijja and tanha. But how? Through the cultivation of morality, sila, mental stability, samadhi, and panya, wisdom. So those practices that always strive to be away from and ultimately destroy ignorance and craving and all other defilements, and at the same time approach nearer to the acquiring of wisdom, are those actions that we call kusala actions. And also, this is all more about the practice, no? So effort of this kind is always productive and helpful, and they are with happy resultants, then they give good result, leading towards the goal. And on the other hand, those actions that never strive to be away from, but always consort with ignorance and craving, and sinking more and more deeply into the association with them, are those that are called akusala, unwholesome actions. And these kind of actions always produce unhappy result or non-desirable results, let's say. Okay, so that's the definition of what is kusala and what is akusala. After understanding the definition of kusala and akusala, we'll first go into the akusala cittas. As unwholesome consciousness, there are 12 kinds of unwholesome, 12 cittas altogether. They are associated with lobha, greed or attachment, moha, delusion, ignorance, and dosa, aversion. So today we will first look at the lobhamūla citta, the group of lobha. Lobha means greed and attachment. Mula here, mula means root. So cittas, consciousness. So here we're looking at the group of greed-rooted consciousness. Now, here, these types of consciousness are akusala cittas. They are active cittas. Those are actions that are done with lobha and with greed. When we are doing bodily actions, verbal actions, or mental actions with greed, this kind of lobhamūla citta, greed-rooted consciousness, arise. And when we talk about action, then we all know action, literally, karma means action. So those are the cittas that plant seeds. They create karma. So later, result will happen. When we plant seeds, then when conditions are right, then resultant will arise. So these ones, they are active, they are actions. So these akusala cittas, unwholesome cittas, are always the cause. They are karma. Then later on, we will go to another type of cittas, which are not active, which are the results of this kind of cittas. Okay, so let's look at this, focus on this greed-rooted consciousness first. For lobhamūla citta, there are 4 aspects to it. The first one is, of course, lobha, greed and attachment. Oh, I see that there is a question. Yes, please.
I'm just wondering about the word action that you used. Just trying to make sense of it, because Bhante, always says karma is not about action, it's about just the mind state on its own. So I got a little bit confused when you used the word action there.
Mm-hmm.
I think what he meant was, even if you don't do anything physically, then these things are still unwholesome.
Yes. Now, when we talk about action, we mentioned 3 types: bodily action, verbal action, and mental action. Yes. So those that when you say that when we don't do anything, that's physical action. When we don't do physical action, actually there are mental action. So karma, exactly in ultimate reality, means cetana, the intention that arises together with that citta. So it is actually a cittasika, a mental ingredient. So when we perform an action, let's say, why do I say an action? Because let's say when we perform a bodily action, or when we say something, a verbal action, or when we just imagine something, we think something, citta arise in our mind. Yes, and that citta always associate with cetana, with intention. So that intention is that which cause karma, that which is karma itself. So if we are, let's say I'm not actually stealing anything, even I'm greedy, but I'm just thinking about it. I'm just thinking, oh, how nice, I wish I had that. So I'm having a greedy mind, let's say at that moment. So that lobhamūla citta, that consciousness that are greed-rooted arise. And then that cetana, that intention that is associated with this mind is that which is karma.
Thank you. That makes it much clearer. I didn't realize that those things were also action in this case.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. So let's focus now on the greed-rooted consciousness first. So lobhamūla citta, greed-rooted consciousness, the first aspect to it is that it must always associate with, obviously, greed or attachment. And then another aspect to it is a mental feeling. It arises together with a mental feeling. And it also arises together with or without wrong view, it can be. We're coming into detail of each of these aspects. Huh? Then another aspect to it is whether it is unprompted or whether it is prompted. So with these four aspects, we defined greed-rooted consciousness. So let's go into the first one, greed and attachment. Here, greed and attachment, when we say greed and attachment, this word sounds a little bit strong, but actually any lobha, any desire from very subtle liking or fondness, or even just a preference, wishing, or to greed, or to yearning, infatuation, to more higher intensity, like self-indulgence, seduction, attachment, covetousness, lust. And so from all this, even obsession, so from the very subtle form to the very gross form are all called lobha here. So lobha include all this, all the range. Sometimes it can be so subtle that it can't we can even confuse whether it is like, whether it is a compassionate act, whether it is like a tender or a delicate mind or something, but it can sometimes disguise, lobha can disguise also in a very subtle form. But in one way or another, at the end, there is always intention to satisfy its fundamentally grasping nature. No? So all those different variety of wanting or liking from the subtle to gross are all included here as lobha. Okay, now the second aspect to the greed-rooted consciousness are mental feeling. Here, the Pali word is Vedana. Vedana, translated as mental feeling. Here, it is divided into three types. First, mental pleasure, somanassa. Then we have mental displeasure, mental pain, domanassa. And then we have mental neutrality, upekkha, or indifference. Sometimes you can find this translation indifferent, neutrality in different by different translators. So all cittas always arise with a mental feeling. So when citta arise by getting in touch with any object through any of the door, there is always a mental feeling towards that object. And here we have to be very careful about this English word feeling, that Vedana, this Pali word, because there is no other English word that can better translate. So most of the time it is feeling is being used, but we have to be careful that it should not include the alternative usage frequently included in English as referring to the aspects of emotion, sentiment, affection, sympathy, or tenderness, or not this kind of feeling. We're not talking about this emotion or this kind of affection, this kind of feeling, but simply Vedana is the mental taste of the experience. So when citta take an object, it is how that citta experience that object. That mental taste, only that. Only that, okay? So here with greed-rooted consciousness, lobhamūla citta, it can associate with, very obviously, when we want something, we can want it very happily, no? We can attach to something with mental pleasure, no? When we want something, we like it very much with mental pleasure, it is possible. Do you think it's possible to attach to something with displeasure or mental pain? Can we like and dislike the thing? Can I want and not want it at the same time? It's not possible, yeah? So you either want it or either you don't want it, because domanassa, this pleasure is actually aversion. It doesn't like it, doesn't want it. So it never associates with greed-rooted consciousness, because when you want something, then the feeling is like you want to attach with it either happily or either just neutrally. So domanassa here is not possible, but mental neutrality, upekkha, is possible. So how? Let's say this depends very much on the object. For example, if someone offers you something very valuable, something that you have always wanted, then the mind gets attached to that thing very happily. I'm so happy at this, I always wanted it. So this lobhamūla citta can associate with mental pleasure. But if someone gives you something just very simple, oh, I have an extra pencil, do you want it? Then, okay, I can have it. I don't really need it, but maybe later I can use it. I can take it. So there is also this attachment to that object, but not so very happily. The feeling is not so strong towards it. So that those kind of lobhamūla citta is connected, or is associated, sorry, not connected, it's associated with mental neutrality, or upekkha here, the Pali word. Okay, so which one do you think is stronger? Which lobhamūla citta is strong? Yes, Ada has a question.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify, like in the pencil example, there's mental neutrality, but this is still considered an unwholesome state, like wanting to take that pencil?
Actually, it depends very much on the attitude of the person at that moment. Now, since we are talking about the lobhamūla group, here we're talking about the greed-rooted group. So imagine that person that he's wanting that pencil. In that case, it can be a very, very light wanting. It's not really like very strong towards it. That's therefore this citta is associated with a kind of neutral or not very happily attached to it, no? But yes, in this case, if it is a greed-rooted consciousness, if that in the mind of that person, if there is a little bit of attachment or wanting of that thing, then it is an unwholesome consciousness, lobhamūla citta arise. Sometimes we can depend on the mind state of the person. Maybe the person is thinking, oh, I can take this pencil. I know that there is my neighbor, this kid, that he doesn't have enough stationery. I'm gonna bring it to him. It will be useful for him. So maybe he's thinking in that way. So that can be a wholesome citta arise in his mind, thinking that this is a good opportunity. I can take this, and then it is going to be helpful for this kid that doesn't have a pencil. So in that case, maybe a kusala citta arise in his mind. So that is another category when we come to introduce the kusala cittas, the beautiful mindset, beautiful cittas. Then at that time we will see what kind of mental feeling or what kind of ingredient are included there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the examples that we use just to illustrate how this can happen in our daily life, no? So not necessarily in that situation, it must always be greed. So for some people, it could be. For some people, it could not be. Depends very much on the attitude of the person in the situation. The greed-rooted consciousness that is associated with mental pleasure is usually stronger than that that is associated with mental neutrality. Okay, so let's continue to the other aspect. With or without wrong view. Here, wrong view, the Pali word is ditti. So when you see this word ditti only without an adjective in front, then it usually means wrong view. Actually, ditti only means view. But when we want to say right view, like in the Noble Eightfold Path, then we always say samaditi, right view, which is the one of the path factor. But if we only see the word ditti, most of the time it is referred to wrong view. Now, what does it mean by wrong view here? We'll give an example. If a person, he's wanting to steal something. And then he thinks that it's okay to steal, to take, nothing happened and nothing's wrong about it. And then he go ahead and then he take this mobile from the other person. So he's acting this action with wrong view because he's thinking that that's okay. Stealing is nothing wrong about it. Okay, now, if another person, he's really wanting the same situation, he's wanting it, but then he knows there is consequences, like stealing is not good, but the lobha is stronger in this case, but I really want it, and then he go ahead and then he did it, but he knew that it's not okay to do so. So that is called without wrong view. Okay, so when we do something that we can do it differently, you know, sometimes, although the action might be the same, but that person, he might do it with greed and with wrong view, thinking that there's nothing wrong in doing so, that it's okay. There's no consequences to it. And another person, he might think that this is not good, but I did it anyway. So that is with greed, but it is without wrong view. Okay, so in this case, which one do you think is stronger? Which one? Edith, which one are you saying?
With wrong view.
With wrong view. Yes, with wrong view is stronger. Sometimes some people say that without wrong view, so although he knew it, but then he still do it, isn't it worse? Sometimes people might say it like that, no. But actually, our teachers explain that thinking that there is nothing wrong in doing wrong is actually worse, because there is nothing to stop him from doing so. If a person, he knows doing that is not good, at the end he still did it, but at least he knew it's not good. So there is possibility that next time he might not do it, because at least he knows it's not okay. So doing it and thinking it's okay with wrong view is worse in this case, it's stronger. Okay, so that's about wrong view. So we have went through 3 aspects, and let's go to the last one, unprompted and prompted. Now this prompted is an effort, the effort that is required to do the action. For example, same case, this person, he's wanting to steal the mobile from this person, and nobody told him to do so. He just thought, yes, I'm going to do it. And he's so spontaneously, without a second thought, yes, I'm going to do it. So that one is called unprompted. In another case, he haven't even actually thought about it, but then his friends say, hey, why don't you take it from him? And then he thought, that sounds like a good idea. Okay, let's do it. Then in that case, he's being prompted by someone. So this citta can also be either prompted or unprompted. And this prompted is not necessarily always by another person. Sometimes when we do something, we hesitate a little bit. And so this person, he's like not spontaneously, yes, I'm going to do this. He's like, should I do it? Should I not do it? Yes, I should do it. Okay, in that case, then he is prompted by himself. That is also called prompted. Okay, so the other aspect to this lobhamūla citta, greed-rooted consciousness, is unprompted or prompted. Again, which one do you think is stronger? So here, unprompted is actually stronger, because no second thought, yes, I'm doing it. Yes, so that is stronger than a little bit hesitation or thinking about it, no? Okay, so that's the 4 aspects of the greed-rooted consciousness. Now, with this 4 aspects, 8 kinds of greed-rooted consciousness are being defined according to these 4 aspects to it, no? The feeling, the wrong view, and the prompting. Well, actually, these three, because lobha itself, since it is a great-rooted consciousness, it must always associate it with lobha, and that does not change. Then what changes is the mental feeling that is associated with it, whether it is performed with wrong view or without, and whether it is prompted or unprompted. So very quickly, we have covered 8 types of lobhamūla citta. How so? So there are 4 types. Four actually, not 4 kinds are accompanied by mental pleasure and then associated with wrong view, and it is either prompted, unprompted, or prompted. So that's the first lobhamūla citta, the first type of great-rooted consciousness, accompanied by mental pleasure, associated with wrong view, unprompted. Second one, accompanied by mental pleasure, associated with wrong view, prompted. Okay, so in the same way, the number 3 and number 4 are those that are accompanied by mental pleasure, but it is dissociated from wrong view. He knows that it is not okay. And then unprompted and prompted again. The last 4 of them, 5, 6, 7, 8, are those that arise accompanied with mental neutrality, associated with wrong view, unprompted or prompted, and those associated from dissociated from wrong view, unprompted and prompted. So with this different situation, with different associations, that made 8 kinds of great-rooted consciousness possible. Okay, until here, we okay? Yes, okay. Okay, so, yes, Edith.
I mean, I just realized maybe this is in the severity order. So the first one is the most severe, and so I just wanted to ask if the feeling trumps, for example, the wrong view.
The feeling what, sorry?
Yes. Trumps. It's just it's more important and more stronger in the karmic consequence than the wrong view, for example, because neutrality. I see that those are like less severe.
Yes. So okay. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Yes, it is. The first one is the strongest, actually. Number 1, that it is, imagine a person, he's stealing very happily. He's very happily attached and he's stealing very happily. And it is associated with wrong view, like he's thinking that it's okay to do so. Nothing's wrong about it. And nobody asked him to do so. And he doesn't have a second thought and he just did it. So that's chemically the strongest one. And the second one, he's very happily doing so, and he thinks nothing is wrong about it, but he hesitated a little bit, or someone suggested him. So it's a little bit less worse, let's say, a little bit less. Then the third one, he's still happily doing it, although he knows that it is not okay to do so, but he still spontaneously, he did it. So it is according to that level. So yes, with mental neutrality, it is a little bit less strong, because a person, he's not doing it like with such mental happiness, let's say, he like very eagerly doing so. No, he's like a little bit more neutral. Yes, I'm going to do it, and then I think it's okay, but not so happily. So chemically, it's a little bit less. Yes, Julie.
Sorry, I'm getting kind of stuck on the like unprompted versus prompted. Mm-hmm. And like, for me, prompted is like a thought, like internally, right? Like a thought, or like through the senses, like seeing something, like it's like a prompt. Mm-hmm. But it is prompted, like, does that work as prompt, or does it have to come from like someone else? I'm not clear about like unprompted and prompted.
Okay. So unprompted means that this citta in this case, lobhamūla citta, this greed consciousness, it arises so spontaneously in that person. Like we take the example that of stealing, like he's wanting to do that action, and then he did it without a second thought. This greed-rooted consciousness just arises in his mind, and he's very determined and sure that I'm going to do it. So that's unprompted. Nobody asked him or nobody suggested him. Sometimes maybe the word English word is could be confusing. Some people use instigated. I don't know if this word is it's alternative word, then it might be easier for you to understand. So that's unprompted, or then prompted is either by oneself or by another person. With the example that we just used, that the person was going to steal something, but it was the suggestions of his friend. He actually didn't had this idea, but then his friend, hey, why don't you do so? Then he thought, oh yeah, that sounds good. Okay, I'm going to do it. So it was not spontaneously that he wanted to do that, but someone suggested him, and then he thought, okay, that sounds good. Okay, I'm going to do it. So that's prompted or instigated, no, in another English word, or it can be instigated or prompted by himself. So he was thinking, hesitating, should I do it? Should I not do it? Like, okay, so I do it. So that is also considered prompted by himself. Is that more clear?
Thank you very much for clarifying. Yes, it's very clear. Thank you.
Welcome. Yes, Bob.
So I was wondering, is it possible for greed-rooted consciousness to be accompanied by mental displeasure? Like, let's say there was a criminal and their boss said, you need to go steal from this old lady, or you need to go rob a bank. The person feels very bad. They feel very ashamed. They feel afraid. They don't want to do it. Would this be something that's not associated with greed-rooted consciousness, or would the greed-rooted consciousness be kind of mixed in with another kind of consciousness?
Okay, so now we have to remember when we talk about the Abhidhamma or each citta, we are looking at things microscopically. So we are looking at each citta, and each citta that arises like billions of them in each seconds, no, in each blink of an eye, billions of them pass by. So in this case, whenever one steals something, it is always associated with greed-rooted consciousness. And when he wants to take something, because it is not possible to want to take something without wanting. Microscopically, I'm talking about microscopically. So those that are always associated with taking something is associated with greed-rooted consciousness. In this case, most probably with neutral feeling. He's not like very happily doing so, but he did it because he had to. So at that moment, that greed-rooted consciousness most probably associated with mental neutrality in this case, and dissociated from wrong view because he know that that's not okay, and it is prompted by someone. So this is the number 8, no, the one that is less worse, no, in that case. But then because he is not wanting to do it, he really doesn't want to do it, but he had to, then those are actually dosa mula citta, cittas that are associated with aversion, but they do not arise at the same time. So because mine are so fast, so the process of the greed-rooted consciousness towards that object, at that moment that this greed-rooted consciousness arises, and then in the next processes, then he remembered that the person that forced him to do so, that is aversion, not towards the object that he's going to take, aversion towards the other person who told him to do so. So object also different, and citta also different. But then the process are so fast. So the greed processes, and then there's the aversion process, and then there's greed again, there's aversion again. So mixed together in that way, but not in one single citta. Greed-rooted consciousness can never associate with domanassa, can never associate with mental displeasure. Okay, Claudia.
Yeah, so my question is, so with meditation, you can lower from the gross to the subtle, so go in reverse. This is correct?
Yes,
So, for example, before when I started to meditation, I didn't know about certain things, so I had the wrong view. Now I know I have a right view.
Yes, definitely. That's why it is important to know and to practice, because without knowing, then we just act automatically. But with knowledge, with knowing, then we know what should be done, what should not be done, what is considered kusala, what is considered akusala. So even sometimes, because we have long habit, every one of us have long habit of some kind of unwholesome minds still arised in us, because we are not totally enlightened yet, and it's totally normal. But with practice, if we have mindfulness, if we are being mindful, we very soon notice that this kind of consciousness are already arised in the mind. As soon as we spot it, then we have chance to change it. So that is very important. And with practice, surely, at least maybe not yet to the point that it does not arise anymore, but at least we spot it, and then its duration is shorter, at least. So little by little, and we're getting better and better. Okay, another question from Alpar. Sorry if I pronounce your name not correctly.
No, it's all right.
Mm-hmm.
I just have one question regarding the dissociated from wrong view. So we gave the example that if somebody steals and they know that it is wrong, but if they know that it is wrong, then it would be already a right view because they do know. So up until now, I thought my understanding was that dissociated from wrong view simply means that there is no fabrication of an idea, whether like, for example, if I buy something and if I think that it's going to be mine forever, that is with wrong view, and without wrong view, it would be that I simply don't have such thought that it will last eternally, correct? For example. So I would like to ask about this part. I will try to reformulate a bit.
Okay.
So
yes, please.
if somebody steals and they think that there is nothing wrong with it, then that is wrong view, associated with wrong view. But if they steal and they know that it is wrong, in that moment of knowing that it is wrong, it's no longer lobha, it's already wisdom, right? Because in the moment that you know that stealing is wrong, in that moment you cannot have lobha because you have panya
Yes.
as a mental factor, correct?
Yeah. Okay.
So okay.
Yeah, I got what you want to say. Yes. Okay. So here, at the moment of a stealing, it takes, let's say, 5 minutes to steal something. So within that 5 minutes, billions of minds arise and passes away, or arise and passes away. So it is possible that at some point when he is thinking about that, oh, doing this is not good, then those times that it could be kusala, it could be associated with wisdom, could be. But then when at the moment that when he is actually stealing, most of the time, because we're talking about microscopically one citta, at the moment, the person is actually not really thinking about whether this is it is okay or not okay. It's more the attitude that the person generally holds. Yes. So for that specific moment, because he generally think that way, so this citta is associated or not associated with that kind of wrong view, but not that at that exact moment when he's stealing, he is thinking about it, that it is good or it is not good. It's precise, more precisely, it should be understood this way, I think.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, I just wanted to introduce the Pali words here. You don't have to remember it, just just listen to it so that we get familiar with the words. Now, accompanied by mental pleasure in Pali is called somanasa sahagata. Somanasa is the pleasurable mental feeling. So this word comes from su plus mana. Su means good or pleasant, and mana is the mind. So the mind that is pleasant or feeling happily. So this mind state is called somanasa. Sahagata, saha means together, and gata means arise, or it means to be. So it arise together with mental pleasure. Somanasa sahagata. And then accompanied by neutral feeling is called upekkha sahagata. Upekkha, here mental neutral feeling. You may find this word in many other places. Sometimes it means tranquility, but here in this case, it's not really like that level of tranquility. It's just mental neutral feeling, also called upekkha. Then we have ditthi, sampayutta, or vipayutta. Sam means together or associated with, and vipayutta, dissociated from. So ditthi gata sampayutta or ditthi gata vipayutta. Then we have unprompted asankarika or prompted sasankarika. So if you look at later on, if you look at the compendium of the Abhidhamma, the Abhidhammata Sangaha, then you will find that the eight kind of lobhamūla citta, the eight kind of greed-rooted consciousness. First one, somanasa sahagata ditthi gata sampayutta asankarika is the first type of lobhamūla citta. Second type, somanasa sahagata ditthi gata sampayutta sasankarika, prompted. Then somanasa sahagata ditthi gata vipayutta, dissociated from asankarika or sasankarika. So these are just the Pali names of it, that it would be good that we we don't have to remember it, and don't get overwhelmed by all these new words, but just I would like to introduce to you. So many times when we listen to it again and again, then we know that somanasa, mental pleasure, upekkha, mental neutrality, ditthi, wrong view, with or without, sampayutta, vipayutta, asankarika, unprompted, sasankarika, prompted. So these are the names of the first 8 kind of lobhamūla citta. Okay, so now we are almost coming to the end. Actually, I prepared a little exercise. Let's just go through it very quickly, so that we see that these lobhamūla cittas, does it really arise in our mind or not? Just 30 seconds. Just reflect, how or when does this kind of greed-rooted consciousness arise in us in our daily life? When they arise, what kind of feeling? Mental feeling, very happily, just neutrally, whether it is associated with wrong view or dissociated from wrong view, or sometimes it could be prompted, sometimes it could be unprompted. So many occasions, sometimes it could be stronger, sometimes it could be like just very simple things. Okay, so whenever greed-rooted consciousness arises, it's always one of these 8 kinds. So later on, we can continue today considering or reflecting a little bit about what kind of greed-rooted consciousness sometimes arise in us. So as a little just fun exercise, let's take a look. You can switch on your mic if you want. Now, it's just an exercise. They're very hard to say. Just looking at this photo, what kind of mental feeling do you think that this lobhamūla citta arise together with? Anyone?
Joy?
Yes, with mental pleasure. Yeah, yes. So quite obviously with mental pleasure. Okay, how about ditthi? With or without wrong view? It's very hard to say, yeah, because we do not know that person, like what she's thinking. So it could be with or without. Yes. So okay, prompted or unprompted?
Unprompted.
Most probably unprompted. Yes. Okay. Okay. So let's look at another example. Okay. How about this lady here on this side? Mental feeling.
Joy.
Yeah, with pleasure, with mental pleasure. It looks like she's enjoying the gossip. With or without wrong view, again, very hard to say. Prompted or unprompted?
Unprompted.
Prompted, yeah, because maybe she was just there and then she came to tell her something. Yes. Okay. So most probably prompted. Okay. Another one.
So,
oh, yes.
So when someone is surprised, it's still lobha.
If someone's what?
Surprised by something. Surprised.
Not necessarily, but the example that that exercise was wanting to just illustrate a little bit like maybe someone, she was not really wanting to gossip, and then someone comes and then tell her something, then she was really interested. Oh yes, I want to know, like that law.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. Another example, this lady, she was in the supermarket and then there was something to taste. So it could be with or it could be without, actually. Yes, it depends on like if she really liked that cheese and she wanted to take, but like her facial expression could be a little bit neutral, I think, maybe.
Neutral. Yeah.
Maybe. Okay, so with or without wrong view, again, very hard to say. Now, prompted or unprompted? Now it depends, yeah. Okay, if in the case, if the shopkeeper say, hey, why don't you try? Then maybe it is prompted, or maybe it's just there and no one asked her and then she tried, and that could be unprompted also. So in this case, then we can know, like in our daily life, what kind of situation, what kind of lobhamūla citta, with which kind of aspect it arises. Yeah. Okay, another example. Now this guy here, with or without pleasurable feeling. Quite obvious.
With pleasure.
Yeah, somanasaya, with mental pleasure. So with or without wrong view, very hard to say, depends on him. Now, prompted or unprompted? Unprompted, yeah, quite obvious, yes. Very spontaneously. Now, okay, how about his girlfriend? What kind of mental feeling?
Displeasure.
Exactly. So this is actually the next category we are going to look at. She cannot obviously cannot associate with mental pleasure or not even neutrality, very angry. Yeah, so this is associated with displeasure, and in this case, displeasure for dosa mula citta, consciousness associated with aversion, arise not with greed and not with wrong view, it associated with aversion. And in this case, prompted or unprompted?
Unprompted.
Okay. So I hear some voices said prompted, some said unprompted. Okay, so in this case,
no, because I understand prompted and unprompted. I understand, but when I need to say it, there is confusion. But it's just the word in English. But I understand the concept.
Yes. So actually, in this case, it's unprompted. Because prompted, if we say that the English word, it may sound that because his boyfriend did so that's why he did that. It sounds a little bit like that, prompted. But and here we don't mean that. We mean that her anger, that arises in her mind, nobody suggests her to be angry, or she has not a second thought, immediately, spontaneously, she's angry. So in that case, unprompted about this citta. Okay, so not because somebody else did something, but because of herself, she got angry by herself. Yes. So, okay, so this is the next group about dosa that later on we're going to look at next week. Okay, so a kind of greed-rooted consciousness. Now, I will skip a few slides here and get to one important point for contemplation. The Buddha said, Bhikkhu, I know of no other single thing of such power in causing the arising of wish for sense pleasure that has not already arisen, or causing the becoming more or increase of sense pleasure that has arisen, than the feature of beauty in things. This is from the Anguttara Nikaya 1.11. So the Buddha said, the cause of increasing or the arising of mental sense pleasure that has not yet arisen, or the increase of sense pleasure that has already arisen, are the feature of beauty in things. But actually, beauty in this world exists, and there's nothing wrong about it. Beauty is there, it's always there, and they are beautiful, and that's okay. But the problem is our clinging and desire for those beautiful things that enslave us and brings us suffering. The beauty of things in itself, it's okay. But when we get attached to it and be enslaved by it, then that's where dukkha, where suffering arises. Then it continues in the sutta. Because I know not of any other single thing that, when untrained, leads to such great harm as the mind. An untrained mind leads to great harm. I know not of any other single thing so conducive to great benefit as the trained mind. The trained mind indeed conduces to great benefit. So here, the beauty of things exists. The problem is whether the mind is trained or not. Our reaction towards these beautiful objects, whether we react to it with wisdom or we react to it with lobha, with attachment. So it is very, very important. First, like when this relates to what Claudia was saying a little while ago. So first, it is very important in our daily life to be aware of and recognize the nature of unwholesome states such as lobha, not only when they have arisen, but also when they are liable to arise. So what is this actually? Sati, no? Mindfulness. So with mindfulness, then we can recognize very quickly when this lobhamūla citta, Greek-rooted consciousness, arises in our mind, or we know that it is possible that it can arise, so we have to be careful. And the mind should be trained so it becomes capable of being directed to the right way. You know, it's like a train. When we see that the mind is now having lobha, it's going to the akusala side. Now mindfulness is already there. Then we have to quickly recognize it and pull the lever, and then we change our direction towards kusala. So once we have mindfulness, when sati is there, then it is possible not only to recognize it, but also to redirect the mind, to understand it, and now take this as our meditation object. Understand the nature of lobha, understand how and why it arises, and from there we learn. And from this day-to-day experience, then we keep watching and observing, and wisdom arises through this experience, our day-to-day experience. Okay, so conclusion. Sayadaw U Titila, he said, the study of Abhidhamma is a precise and comprehensible method by which knowledge of all such states can come to be known, and how the working of the mind takes place. Armed with such knowledge, its application and practice is the purpose of the Buddha's exhortation. So why do we study the Abhidhamma? Why do we want to know what kind of citta exists? Because we want to put this knowledge into practice. So when we have this knowledge, when we know what is there, then in our daily life, when we observe, when we practice, then we understand what's happening, how is the mind working, and what do we have to do. So this is the purpose of studying the Abhidhamma, to know the nature of the mind. Okay, so that's all for today. And it is actually, we have only a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm just worried that I might be asking a question that's too far ahead of the coursework. So I think I'll email it if that's okay.
Sure, yes, that would be better. Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a few minutes. Anyone else wants to ask any questions concerning today's content? Okay, so in this case, and we will finish the session today, and next week we are going to the dosa-mūla citta, aversion, citta consciousness associated with the root of aversion. Okay, All right, so let's finish the session by saying itam no punyam nibbanasa paceyo hotu. Itam no punyam nibbanasa paceyo hotu. Itam no punyam nibbanasa paceyo hotu. Itam no punyam sabbasatanam pajima. May our effort in studying the Dhamma together be conditions for the arising of Magga Citta, which is enlightenment, and we share merits to all beings. Sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, thank you everyone, and see you again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Caraṇapālī.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good week ahead.